rules feel a bit muddy.
Muddy? Oh, sorry I'm not a drunk on the verge of losing custody like every other woman solving murders these days.
We can go ahead and get to the first part of my stream today. And that is my review for the infamous Velma, or at least that's what a lot of people are calling it, chat. Infamous, terrible, the worst thing to ever grace streaming services or computer screens or TV screens in the history of animation, chat. You know, for those that don't know, I want to give you a brief premise of the show. You know, it revolves around the character, the Scooby-Doo character of Velma Dinkley. Voiced by Mindy Kaling, chat. You know, you've seen, I imagine, her television work, her film work before. And she is a, major producer and writer and voice in this show. Focuses on her and the other members, human members that is, of Mystery Incorporated before they were Mystery Incorporated, chat. Now, to start off, yes, like I grew up a Scooby-Doo fan. I feel like a lot of us grew up watching Scooby-Doo and, the many, iterations and adaptations over the last 50 years the show has been in existence, chat. Within 50 years, you get a lot of different interpretations of that show, a lot of different takes, right? And I've liked a lot of them, chat. Obviously, I grew up with the original stuff. I remember as a kid staying home, when I was sick, especially watching A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, which is kind of like a prequel series, if you will, when they were all like in grade school. Scooby-Doo was a puppy, they were solving mysteries. Fred always thought it was a red herring. It's like very fun. And I remember darker entries in the series, like Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, where actually people literally died in that movie. Like dozens, if not hundreds of people died, and there were disturbing sequences and scenes. It's like, oh, it's pretty cool. And obviously, you had the live action movies as well, which, I like to a certain degree. Some scenes in it, not all great in my opinion, chat. Some good ideas, maybe not very well executed. But, there's at some point in our lives, we've been exposed. We've been exposed, chat. Maybe you've been exposed too. You've been exposed to Scooby-Doo in some way, shape, or form. And, when it was announced that Warner Brothers at HBO was going to do an adult-themed Scooby-Doo animated series, I thought, that sounded actually really cool. I'm not against that. Years ago, chat, James Gunn, his original scripts for those Scooby-Doo movies, they were going to be like an R-rated comedy. And I thought, that's brilliant. I like parodies. I like deconstructive media of, old things from the past. I think that could be fun. There's a lot of potential there, chat. A lot to mine for humor, right? And so when it was announced that it was like, okay, they're thinking of doing a prequel series. And then, Mindy Kaling got involved, obviously. And, what I know Mindy Kaling best from is as, obviously, a performer in The Office. She was also one of the writers for The Office, the American version, chat, with Steve Carell and John Krasinski. And I really love that show. I think she did some great work there. And there's been other things that I've seen her do, and it's been hit and miss. But I think she's talented. I was like, okay, she's gonna do a Scooby-Doo series. Cool. And I remember when they released the first. It was like a teaser trailer. And it was almost like not even like an actual trailer. It was more like a scene. It's not in the actual show. And where it was addressing some of the backlash of a new reinterpretation of Scooby-Doo, and where Velma. She is not a white girl in this particular show. She is, she's voiced by Kaling, and she's Indian, and they were kind of like, making fun of the people that were complaining about that. I thought, okay, that looks fun. But I like the whole idea, the concept of something that's R-rated within the Scooby-Doo universe, and being funny, being a parody, chat, But the show, the streaming series has since come out. At least the first 2 episodes have been released on HBO Max, chat, and it's been a whole kerfuffle, to say the least. The internet's on fire. Everyone's saying that this is one of the worst interpretation of Scooby-Doo, if not the worst interpretation of Scooby-Doo, one of the worst animated shows of all time, one of the worst things to ever exist. I'm like, all right, well, I have to admit, I saw some of the trailers, the full trailers that they released. I wasn't a big fan of those. I thought, some of this is just not hitting for me. It's not really all that funny. It's got some of the flaws I feel like that often afflict a lot of modern day comedic cartoons. But I listen, despite all the vitriol and despite all the hate that the show is getting right now, it's getting a lot, Chad, a lot. I was like, let me at least watch it. Let me at least give it that. Let me give it a chance. And I watched it. I watched the first 2 episodes, which are about 25 minutes each. 25 long minutes, 50 minutes chat with Stinger. So really it's like a half hour. Maybe it's like 27 and a half minutes. So basically I watched an hour of Velma. And watching those 2 episodes, I realized what I think the show is trying to do. You know, at its base level, the show is attempting to be a parody of the original Scooby-Doo property, right? Introducing, versions of the characters that we've been watching from the original series for decades. As I said, I actually have nothing against that idea. And it's fun to see that kind of deconstructive content in films and television. There are plenty of recent examples, very recent examples, of this type of content that has gone on to great success. Harley Quinn most recently, Chad, which is also on HBO Max. And stuff that's maybe a little bit older, from the 2000s. The Venture Bros, which was a parody and deconstructive content on Johnny Quest, right? The problem is that the series doesn't actually seem to be interested in being a deconstructive parody or a satire of the original Scooby-Doo show. Yes, it has some of the characters from the original cartoons, but these versions of them have absolutely nothing in common with those characters. Their personalities are devoid of any similarities. If anything, the show is almost manically obsessed with observational humor and making very dated and tired pop culture references. That really seems to be the show's only focus. That's the thing that is paramount. That's the thing that's like, if we're going to do anything, we're going to do these 2 things, and everything else is secondary or tertiary. We're just not even going to bring it up or just ignore it. And because of that, that is the focus, with every other scene, you're going to either get one of those 2 things every scene, right? That is just the structure of the show. That's what makes it such a boring and grueling watch. It's the kind of show that likes to call out a variety of tropes in modern storytelling, chat, and mysteries, whether they be mystery TV shows or movies or specials. The thing is, though, it then proceeds to then immediately do those things right after. It's like they're thinking, hey, we just state this trope, this thing that we so often see in media in a very smarmy, sarcastic way, we can really just do it right after. And it's constant. It is not like it's one per episode. It's not like, a little throwaway thing. It's like, no, that is what it is every other scene, right? Other than the dated pop culture reference, that would fill in the place of that trope they just brought up, they just made fun of, and then they just do. That is the biggest issue that this show has. It constantly does that. That is the entire fucking structure, and it's so aggravating. Now the other side of it is, when it comes to its writing and its humor, that's what the show is. At a DNA, at a microscopic level. There's no denying. I don't care what any of the writers say. I don't care what Mindy Kaling says. That's what this show is. The other part of it that I think that people are having an issue with, and I think it's justified, no one in the show is likable, and everyone is detestable to each other. There is not a single moment of kindness, of wholesomeness, of endearment. It's caustic. It's toxic. It's fucking mean. When you breaking down the characters that we have, there's a lot of characters, but like of the main cast, you have Velma Dinkley, played by Mindy Kaling, and she plays the character as this smug, sarcastic know-it-all who in reality is not as smart as she actually thinks she is, but because everyone else in the show is dumber than her. Like everyone. There's not a single other character in the show that is as smart as her. And she lets them know that because she literally says that to them, to their faces every time she's with them. She always has a sarcastic, pithy comment. And then she's like, why does everyone dislike me? Because you say these horrible things. You say these horrible things to these characters. And she just rubs you the wrong way. And I know that, like, Velma over the years, like, yeah, she used the nerdy, geeky girl, but, she was very smart. She was very proactive in the show. And, yeah, she's become, like, this cartoon icon, this sexual icon. People, like, appreciate her and like her more than even Daphne. But here, she's just there to call out other people, but not call out herself for her own kind of shitty behavior. And after a while, you just, like the rest of the characters, you just begin to resent her. But I don't know if that's Mindy Kaling's or the show's writers' like intention. It's like they always like, no, Velma's always right. She's always, it's like maybe she might struggle in the episode, but at the very end, she comes out on top. And I'm just like, yeah, that really, really doesn't work for me. And then when it comes to the other characters, Daphne, I mean, they really lean into her stereotypes. In this case, she is, they do another race swap. She's like, I think they say she's like half white and half Asian or something. But, she's very vapid. She is, she's very much the stereotypical popular girl who was former friends with Velma, but they fell out of being friends because, Velma is a nerd and a geek, and she can't hang around someone like that because they're a nerd and the geek. But then, they in order to give her something to do, because that was always the joke, is like Velma she's pretty and she gets captured, right? That was like it's like that's something you make fun of, right? I made fun of it in various other adaptations. Scooby-Doo made fun of it in the live action films, right? And here they're like, yeah, let's just make her a drug dealer too. She's a drug dealer, and she's trying to keep it a secret from her two mothers, Chad, who are very, very, very incompetent cops that do horrible things. Like, it's like the joke is they're police officers and they break the law constantly and they don't respect anyone's rights. I'm like, okay. Like, that's it. That's the running gag with them. And, she's just doing it for attention. And, she's bitter over the fact she doesn't know who her birth parents are. Like, that's kind of her arc in the show. And then you have the character of Norville. People are upset, like, who's this Norville character? So, Shaggy's real name is actually Norville. Now, they did a race swap with him. He is a black man. And when they really say it, they to describe himself, I am a black man that does not do drugs. Like, that's his thing. And then he blinks at the camera when he says it. I'm like, okay. Like, it's supposed to be like this funny bit. And he's a total simp for Velma. Like, his whole existence is based around not doing drugs, wink, because Shaggy, he was a stoner. And, or maybe he was a stoner. We don't know, wink, wink. And he has this unrequited love for Velma. And anytime he opens up to her, and this is the thing that bothers me. This is what makes him a fucking simp. And I usually don't use that kind of terminology, but in this case it applies. Anytime he opens up to her or expresses respect, this is the thing that bothers me. Anytime he expresses respect to her or admiration, even love, like even just those two things, but love as well, she responds in just a really dismissive way. Like when he tries to compliment her, she just says something nasty right back at him. I'm just like, what is this? It's like, again, it's devoid of any wholesomeness. And then throughout the first two episodes, part one, he's pretty much just her driver. He has the mystery machine, not really the mystery machine, right? Oh, we'll bring up the mystery machine, and the catchphrase is like, Zoinks and Jinkies. They're in the show, not in the way you think they are. But he's just her driver in the first episode. And the next one, he wants to get her attention. And so he thinks, oh, if I help buy her this thing for $500, she'll love me, right? And so he proceeds to try to sell all the stuff that means the most to him or to give away a kidney. And again, and when he does express all these things to her, she is pithy and sarcastic and smarmy to him. It's like, why would you do that? It's stupid. You're dumb. It's like, So that's what he is. And then you have Fred, who is voiced by Glenn Howerton, who's probably best known for playing Dennis in Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Very talented guy. And I don't blame the voice actors. They're working with this material, Chad. There's only so much you can do. Fred is he is white and dumb. That's what he is. He's white. They constantly, every scene he comes in, they say, "You're white," and you're stupid, and you have a really small dick. That's it. That's all that defines him, man. Apparently, because he was so coddled through his entire life, and they say this, you're a white man, you're white, therefore you were coddled your entire existence. He never went through puberty, and so his scrotum and his penis are like the size of like a baby's, like a newborn baby's scrotum and penis, chat. That's it. That's the joke, and they repeat that over and over and over again. He's so white, and he's so pathetic that he can't even like cut his own meat. This did get a giggle out of me because he's like, "Mommy, cutties." He can't cut pancakes. He can't cut he can't cut solid food. You know, he like literally you have to like chew it for him and like feed him like a baby bird or he'll choke to death, which he proceeds to then choke at one point in the show because the cut was too big. Right? And that's it. That's all they do with him. He's white and he's rich and he has a very, very, very small, underdeveloped micro penis. That's it. That's it. That's at least the first 2 episodes. That's what they've done. You know, in this, like the first one, they established like him and the thing that's confusing though is like Velma has a crush on him, right? And that's never really explained why. It's like Velma who despises everyone in the show for whatever reason. She has this crush on Fred. I'm like, that's never really explained why. I don't really get that. But Fred's dating Daphne in the show initially, and then that's done away with. And they establish immediately in the second episode, I mean, it's not much spoilers really, that Daphne and Velma are actually, they're lesbians. And they actually love each other. Like, that's the big thing. And it kind of happens out of nowhere. It's like, okay, shit. Because they touch hands. As you all know, chat, I believe, let me know, bisexual and gay people in my chat, if you touch hands, you're lesbians now. If you touch hands if you are a male, you touch hands of another male. If you are a female, you touch hands of another female. You're gay. That's how that works. That's what the show establishes. It's just okay. And you're like, all right. And then, self-referential humor, pop culture reference. Let's call out this trope and then immediately proceed to do it. That in between all of this is what's happening. It just, again, I go back to this shit. It just revels in its mean-spiritedness. And the other thing too, which is like, you gotta be very careful doing this. And it regularly mocks the audience watching it. Listen, I'm not against creators going like wink at the audience. Like if there's like a thing that happens within a show that makes it explode in popularity, and then maybe there's this consistent thing, like especially in animated comedy shows, they've done that before. Like I think a great example of I hate to even say mocking your audience, but almost going, now listen, guys, we know that you do this. You reference this a lot in like real life. I look at Hell of a Boss. Hell of a Boss, which is this web series by Vizzy Pop. I highly recommend it. It's on YouTube. We rewatched some clips on here. It's almost like pays like a lot of respect to not the Golden Age, Renaissance era Disney. Has a lot of songs in it. Focuses on this company, this small upstart business in hell, where you have these assassins going to the human world to kill people. Actually, very wholesome, even though the description sounds horrifying. So they have a character in there named Luna. And she's a hellhound. She's this anthropomorphic wolf girl. She's a secretary. And she's the adopted daughter of Blitzo, who's the owner of the business. And, a lot of people have drawn very sexual images of her. A lot of people are lusting after, the furries and things like that. And they literally have like a moment in one of the episodes. We know how people lust after you when they see you, and they kind of look at the camera and look at the audience. I was like, and I thought that was funny. I was like, that was good because it's true. but in the way in which they do it here, it's like Velma, again, she's making an enemy out of everybody in this show. It's like, you are even more pathetic than adults that still watch cartoons. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Why are you antagonizing your audience? It's not like done once. It's like that a version of that joke is done several times within the first 2 episodes. It's not like a one that's like, all right, let's throw that out of the way. No, they lean into that. And I'm like, and then that leaves me, that's what, at the end of the day, I'm left thinking, who is this show for? It's not, I don't believe it's for Scooby-Doo fans. I don't think it's for adult animation fans or fans of animated comedies. It seems to be a series. And I'm just speculating. I'm not basing this on nothing. It's just, I'm assuming. I can only think. It seems to be a series that Mindy Kaling is using for unworked stand-up, or a rough draft comedy workshop. It's exposition heavy. The comedy doesn't feel well thought out. It's painfully unfunny in a lot of points, and it just features some of the worst attributes that I feel like afflict modern comedy shows, live action or animated, And so I'm just kind of left like, what are you trying to do? And that's the only thing I can think of. It's just like she's just working out comedy bits, and it's like, hey, to do that, let's use Scooby-Doo, and let's capitalize on more successful adult comedy shows right now, like Harley Quinn. A lot of people have compared the show to Harley Quinn. I can see why. Now, the thing that Harley Quinn does right, that Velma does wrong, Harley Quinn. And it's very much a parody. It's a parody of DC Comics and its characters and of Batman, the Bat family and things. And it's talking about, things that have happened within the comics, and it's parodying those things. But at the same time, it's really reverent of the material, and it really mines deep into the lore of DC's history and the comic books and storylines and characters. And it kind of does this fun send-up while also being just really respectful of the characters themselves. It's like you look at Harley Quinn, like how she starts out. It's like, yeah, she realizes, and she struggles with this the entire season, of trying to remove herself from the Joker and rely on her friends, like Poison Ivy or King Shark, right? Or Clayface, or any other of these other supporting characters that come to her aid. And that's where you create the wholesome moments with that. But then you also have characters like Poison Ivy, who literally says, listen, I don't consider myself a supervillain, I'm an eco-terrorist. And she's still doing Poison Ivy things, but she has this really fun relationship with Harley Quinn, the other characters. And it's like, she's sarcastic too, but she has this kind of dry humor. And the other thing that the show does, which I think it's like more people should do this, the characters are also self-deprecating. They're not afraid to make fun of themselves. I'm like, that's good. You should do that more, because then we're endeared towards them. And you also show them as being competent. I think that's the other big thing about the show for Velma, is that many of the characters are just incompetent in the series, except when the plot needs them to win, right? It's like, despite failing, it's like failing upwards. And then something comes out of the blue. It's like, but you actually solved it, Velma. And she's like, yeah. It's like, what? And so it's just weird. And one last thing. So some of the Scooby-Doo references you want. Scooby-Doo, I don't think is in the show. He might be. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like this abomination puppy or something, or I don't know. But in regards to like some of the sayings in the show, like Jinkies and Zoinks and like the Mystery Machine. So as I said before, Daphne's character, we find out she's a drug dealer, and her case, she has she's selling drugs. Her case is the Mystery Machine, right? Her case of drugs. And within the Mystery Machine, she has drugs named Zoinks. and jinkies. That's where all the catchphrases are. They're all drugs and pills and powders and, other illicit substances. And I'm like, okay. And it's like, hey, it's funny, right? I'm like, not really. It's just kind of, then we just go to the next joke and the next pop culture, reference. It's a show that doesn't seem to care that it has Scooby-Doo characters. At the end of the day, it's like, it just feels like the worst of the worst, sitcom comedy out there. It's just, oh yeah, and I guess it just so happens the characters are also versions of Scooby-Doo characters you've seen from the animated show. It's just that. There's nothing about it. There's nothing reverent. It's not reverent of these characters. It's not using the lore, I feel like, in a fun, effective way. You can send up Scooby-Doo. There's plenty of material to do so, but it just seems to not care about that aspect. It's just indulging all the things that make an animated comedy nowadays, or potentially can make an animated comedy nowadays, so bad. So, yeah, and the animation is not that good too. It's just, it's kind of rough. There's something just flat. I know it's 2D, of course it's flat, but I don't know. It's just nothing stands out about it. Nothing made me go, whoa, or it didn't have like a fun, at least at this point, the first two episodes, like an interesting sequence or some fun choreography or a repeating bit or gag, visual, physical gag. It was just like, just nothing really interesting going on. We're in a scene, we have the characters talking to each other, boop, 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 move to the next scene, next location, boop, boop, boop. Velma has these she has a heart condition, and she has these hallucinations, and there's like an evil ghost of her mom, chat. Even her fucking mom hated her. That's the other thing too. Spoiler. Like, she has this, something happened to my mother. And you find out, it's like, no, your mom just fucking hated you because you were terrible to her. It's like, oh, it's like, I don't get it. It's very bizarre that like everyone is just so shitty. But yeah, it's terrible. I don't know if I mean, maybe I'll keep watching. I'm gonna see how this review does. Honestly, I mean, if it does well, people are going like, yeah, we'll keep watching these. I might. But yeah, Chad, the first two episodes of Velma are just they're excruciating. It's just boring. It's unfunny, and it doesn't use any of the things that make Scooby-Doo fun or good. It's a failure on all levels, chat. So I don't know if I would give this a review. I mean, if I had to give it a rating, I suppose, based on the two episodes that I've seen. Even though it's like it drags out this whole plot line about there's these murders happening at the Crystal Cove High School, which is just a den of tropes, of tons of stereotypes and tropes. But there are these girls who are being murdered, and their brains are being scooped out. And it just continues. It's somehow tied into Velma's past, and it's like, okay. And it just feels like you can wrap this up. I don't really care. Why are you making this longer than it needs to be? There was a reason why the Scooby-Doo show, chat, they found out who the villain was at the end of the 22 minutes. I was like, oh, it's fucking Mr. Jenkins. It's like, well, yeah, all right, because it's episodic. So, and they're doing a long form mystery, which I'm like, I don't think that's gonna work, and so far it's not. But yeah, I don't know, man. In terms of a double toasted rating, I think it's a fuck you, honestly. I think it is. I'm almost thinking like a low sumo bullshit, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know who this is really for. And I was trying to think of a moment where it was wholesome. Or if it was kind of just reverent of the Scooby-Doo material, like it used it well. Like you used the Scooby-Doo material well. It doesn't. I can't think of it. So yeah, pretty terrible, chat. I would give this a fuck you on the double toasted scale. So yeah, I know a lot of people are saying a lot of other things about this show, but that's just how I feel about it. I think it's pretty bad. But what about you guys out there? How did you feel about Velma, at least the first two episodes?